Hi, I am Naseem Ahmed and you are watching Naseem Ahmed Sociology channel. Our today's topic is about agents of socialization. If you think about yourself, the kind of person you are, the kind of values you hold, the kind of values you hold, and the kind of perceptions you have about society, the kind of economic attitude you have, the kind of educational attitude you have, the kind of attitude towards business, the attitude towards science, the attitude towards health you hold, the kind of student you are, and then you think about what has been until now the biggest force influencing your behaviors, you will have no difficulty to assess that it has been your family above everything else, which has determined your attitudes towards all of what I have talked about. So, the first and the most important, perhaps, agent of socialization is a person's family. Because when we are born within a family, which is a primary group, we are given a particular economic, religious, familial system which determines our socialization. And our family holds certain values. Our caste system is then linked to the family directly. Our economic situation is directly linked to the family. The importance of education, the kind of schooling we will have, is also determined by our family. So the family is the first organized contact of any individual with this world. And family has various ways of parenting, various ways of upbringing. What we call upbringing in itself includes certain kind of normative behaviors, certain kind of training in the cultural ways is called a person's upbringing, or even parenting has to do with the skills and also with the teaching of our ways of life, which include, of course, values and the norms. You must have heard the word family values. And yes, right at the beginning of our life, we are trained into our ways, our cultural ways, but the filter through which we are trained, the lens through which we are early on trained in our life is our family. And because this is the early childhood is a stage of learning and extreme learning and quick learning, then of course our intimate contact with this primary kind of group really plays a crucial role in our upbringing. And until and unless we live in family, we believe we are like sun in the solar system and everything seems to surround us. Family confers us certain kind of attitudes, but family also gives us material comforts, and family gives us emotional security, and then family also gives us, most importantly, our social identity. So within the family institution, we have a platform to acquire various future roles within our life. So once we live in the family, we are given emotional support by our family members, and not only emotional support but also financial kind of support, and our siblings also play an important role in our early socialization. And when a child is born within a family till the age of 3 months, it's said by psychologists that till the age of 3 months he's not able to conceive himself as some separate entity from his mother. And then the journey of developing independent identity and self starts. And that process continues throughout our life. Initially, we develop a sense of who we are through the lens of society itself. And society plays the role of a mirror in our life, and our family is the first ever mirror we have to think about who we are. It's said that many of the students who ultimately end up becoming engineers or doctors is not because they were extraordinarily gifted as young students, but it was the expectation of parents. It was possibly the fact that parents wanted them to be good at studies, and parents reinforce this again and again through their parenting, and ultimately these children end up conforming to the expectation of their parents. Now, once we exit our family at about the age of 4 to 5, we join our first ever school. And you must know that how difficult the first day at school is, because we were sun in the solar system, and now we have realized there are many suns and many solar systems around us. At the school, which is another agent of socialization, we try to build a kind of, not a personal identity, but a kind of public or a kind of social identity. And that is where we start learning about ourselves through the lens of others. And we start making distinction between people who are significant others and those who are generalized others. Significant others are those who matter the most for our identity formation. Maybe these are the people from our primary groups, whatever these primary groups might be. And one important primary group, as I said earlier, is our family institution. And once we enter the school, we start doing a kind of social comparison. And first ever peer group is also formed at school. And peer group, you must know, is another important agent of socialization. Now, family and school work for promoting a kind of our social identity. And this identity has to be conformed to the expectation, to the models. You must know that early school education also provides us various stories, moral stories. And why we learn these moral stories? Why our socialization is based on these morals is because they teach us what are the roles. Socialization is ultimately acquiring the roles. Also, not only socialization makes us culturally competent individuals, but also teaches us in an anticipatory fashion what roles we are going to take in our future life. So we are given these roles, we are taught these roles at school. And during this early socialization, we have some psychological and physiological problems, especially related to language acquisition. Many many children suffer from the problem of not being able to pronounce hard sounds properly, and that is why we have in our Pakistani culture, and for that matter in any culture, because I'm talking about cultural universals which are there in every culture. So we have these short spins of poems which have these hard sounds, and you must have observed children playing these verbal and phonetic games where they have to repeatedly pronounce those very hard to pronounce sounds, and that is because we want them to remove this issue of speech with the hard sound. If you have not understood what I'm talking about those early childhood riddle like sonnets which children keep on repeating. Akkad bakkad bange bo. I hope you have heard this kind of sonnets in your early childhood. Their function is to remove the problem we have with our language. Then you must have seen your elder siblings playing with you, teacher. They collect various younger children from their street and they start playing teacher. This is to take the role of teacher. They are trying to imitate the role, and this is this is one of the ways we are socialized into our culture, and that is through this performance of role and imitation. And during the school, we try to transform our personal identity into a social identity, and that is why uniforms are implemented in our culture. We have uniforms when we go to school, and that is to inculcate, that is to teach that everyone is equal in this society. Without education, everyone is equal, and it is the education which can ultimately make any difference. And that is the hidden message behind using uniforms at school. Another important agent of socialization is that of peer group. A peer group is is a kind of, thus to say, a pressure group, which is formed by the people who are of the same age, same interest, similar passions, similar kind of socioeconomic status, and it's a group of individuals who strongly identify with each other. And because early peer groups are formed when we are in our age of adolescence, pre-adolescence, etc., therefore peer group end up being a very emotional group for many of us. And one important concept in this regard is that of peer pressure, where your peer group is able to exert a lot of pressure on you by its membership, and you have to follow your peer group at any cost. And sometimes the peer group is in conflict with the values of families, the values of education, and you end up bunking your first class for under the pressure of your peers. And peer group is very interesting because it provides an alternative perspective on life. And often peer group for young people is really well equipped in its attitudes, in its capability to engage into culturally deviant behaviors, in its capability to adapt to new situations, in its capability to engage with cultural industry, in its capability to engage you into risky behaviors, and that makes peer group really interesting. Another very important agent of socialization is mass media. Now, the century in which we are living right now is saturated with a world, a mode of living, which is defined by someone as the age of information, or the network society, or sometimes it's called post-industrial society. All of these definitions of our society make the relevance of group living, the physical group living, and the physical boundaries of group life much irrelevant. Now, every one of us is connected to mass media, which has various important functions in our life nowadays. And one of these functions is that of informing us. Mass media not only informs us, but it also provides us a worldview. It not only tells us what to see, what to watch, but it also tells us how to watch, how to see, how to interpret. So mass media has a greater influence on our mental ability to understand our surroundings. It generates meanings of social reality, what we call construction of social reality. Mass media constructs social reality, and social reality, when it's constructed by mass media or by social media, it can have a very a very different impact. It can be constructed in either ways. It can be constructed in incompatible ways. One single instance can be interpreted in a multitude of manners. For instance, if you look at the famous, nowadays very popular Mukhtaria message by a minister, and it was a personal message this secretary or this person delivered to his friend Mukhtar or Mukhtaria, and this message was then leaked, and we had made a lot of fun out of it. We have got something to talk about. We have got a way to rationalize this pandemic of COVID-19 through our online hyper reality creation, through our deconstruction and reconstruction of very simple and banal facts of our life. We have constructed the lockdown in a very funny way, and that is only possible through mass media. Mass media has a very important role in creating our risk perception, and this is a very big and separate chapter of sociology, but our behaviors are also determined and very heavily determined. And you must have understood during this pandemic lockdown that our behavior is ultimately linked to our perception of risk and fear. So mass media has a big role in creating fear and in creating uh, risks and perception of risk. Mass media can either attenuate or it can exaggerate these perceptions of risk. You will see most of the YouTube channels by news anchors, they give you the title of their message by amplifying your risk perception. They would say, "I have a very bad news for you today," or "You will hear this news and you will feel the world is going to become hell," you know. And that is how mass media affects us. Mass media has children related bad effects. Mass media has some very positive use, especially through the revolution of internet. We have online shopping, we have online classes. This is one of the live examples. And it is very important for us to understand these developments which are going to happen in the social world, and mainly because of this mass media. So mass media is also one of the agents which brings our culture back home. And of course, mass media and peer groups have a kind of retail business of culture industry, and we must look at their impacts very attentively. And now the socialization which occurs within educational institution, or which occurs at your workplace, is called a kind of formal kind of socialization. And families or peer groups or mass media don't have a formal way of teaching us our culture. But you must also know the distinction between the primary socialization. This is the socialization which occurs early on in our family and during early periods of our life. But later on, we have just a secondary kind of socialization. If you are a graduate from a university and you join the university yourself, the socialization which university will be doing as an employer will only be a kind of secondary socialization.